Bespoken Spirits is a modern spirits company blending technology and tradition to take craft spirits to entirely new heights. Their unique craft maturation process unlocks amazing flavor combinations while reducing the environmental impact of each sip. The process is all natural and uses only the highest quality ingredients carefully sourced from the best mills, coopers, and distilleries. The result is an unparalleled flavor experience and something you can feel good about drinking. But don't take our word for it, try it yourself. Bespoken Spirits award-winning products can be purchased through retailers or online. Learn more at www.bespokenspirits.com. There's a new award-winning 4-grain straight bourbon whiskey that's been taking the market by storm, Penelope Bourbon. Penelope's balanced yet flavorful taste profile comes from a unique blend of 3 bourbon mash bills. Currently available in 3 expressions, 4-grain, barrel strength, and toasted, Penelope is remarkably smooth and flavorful. So whether you're sipping neat or using it in your favorite cocktail, Penelope is perfect for you. Penelope Bourbon is available throughout Kentucky, as well as select markets and online at penelopebourbon.com.
With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Proudly made in the USA and inspired by the American lifestyle, Country Smooth Bourbon was developed by the first female founder and CEO of an American bourbon whiskey company as a refined experience to be savored on its own or enjoyed in cocktails. We are dedicated to celebrating the spirit of America and the crafting of premium bourbon whiskey. To learn more, visit countrysmooth.com, where you can order online or find a retailer near you. Cheers. Country Smooth. Female founded, country grounded.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, live, and tonight it is live in the Bourbon Life studios, my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing, man?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great, man. And we are about as live as we can get here.
Yeah, man.
In the Bourbon Life studios.
This is
always
awesome.
Great to be back. So we had a good time last week. You all got to tune in and hear the Bourbon Life crew just sitting around chewing the fat.
Yeah, we got some good feedback on that, man. People enjoyed just the 4 of us, just kind of, or the 3 of us, and Philip calling in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, our long distance dedication from Philip. Always
Yeah.
good to have him calling in as well. So
Yeah, even though after that comparison saying that benchmark foolproof nose was better to him than the 2020 George Stagg, I just about had to put him on mute. But I didn't. But Matt, today's a big day, man. Not only do we have some Barrel Society birthdays, Brett Bestwick, Chris Daniels, and Stephen Kelshaw, but today is Matt's birthday as well. Ta-da! Matt, happy birthday, man.
hey, thanks. What do you know?
Yeah, and you just got back from running the freaking Boston Marathon yesterday too, man.
I did. I got to do one of the 6 major marathons, and what an experience it was.
Yeah.
It really was a great time. That city goes all out.
Does it?
For that marathon. Oh my gosh, the support
Nice.
along the course, all along the way. I've never felt such great hospitality and so welcomed, and being screamed at by 50,000 strangers has never been so welcome.
That's funny. And you wouldn't think about that. I mean, when you think of Boston, you think of the Northeast, you kind of think of that New York attitude. You think about the people just kind of being standoffish and whatnot. So you don't envision when you say, I'm going to run the Boston Marathon, and you say, oh, people are so great, and it's such a wonderful, welcoming community. You're like, wait, what? So,
It's a big deal. They had the day off. People had the day off work. Everybody comes out.
That's awesome, man.
All the college kids come out.
Do they really?
And spectate. Oh yeah, it was a party along the course.
Well, that's pretty awesome, man. Well, you did a great job, man, and you finished in a sub-3, so congratulations on that. I'm sure you'll be back again to do that one more time, or 3 more times, or 10 more times, or whatever, right?
I don't know. Right now, I'm not. Look at a flight of stairs as a challenge right now. I'm feeling it pretty well. But it was a great time.
Awesome, man.
Always good to be back in the Bourbon Life studio.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Matt, and happy birthday, of course. All right, man. We've bantered enough here, right? So we got a great show. This is a lot of fun. Looking forward to a great show tonight. So tell everybody who we have with us, Matt.
Oh, we have got a treat for everybody tonight because we have joining us great friend of the show, soon to be great friend of yours, the founder of McBrayer Legacy Spirits, Bill McBrayer, all the way down from Cincinnati. Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me on the show tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. Congratulations on the Boston Marathon. What a great accomplishment for any runner to have the opportunity to run that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. It really was. It was just the experience of a lifetime for a runner.
Well, Bill, I mean, if we're going to be truthful about it, Matt's really not a runner. Matt's a triathlete. Okay, so
he took a break yesterday.
He took a break. He cut out. He's like, you know what? I'm tired of swimming the 2.4 miles and riding 112 miles before I run the 26.2. So I'm just going to cut out all the crap and just focus on the run. So
felt just as hard yesterday as it does with all that before. Anyway, enough about
Matt.
And about what we've got going on. We've got a great guest for everybody.
That's
tonight,
right.
So.
That's right. And now I have never met Bill, so tonight's the first night to meet him. We had hoped to get a chance to meet at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival last month in September during Bourbon Heritage Month, but unfortunately due to COVID, I wasn't able to make it. But you and Matt got to meet and get to hang out and spend some time together with your wife, Susie. Mm-hmm. So that's great. I'm glad you guys got the opportunity to do that. So that's really cool, and we love it when we get to meet our guests. Because most of the time, a lot of our time, the guests we're doing it on the computer. Everybody's remote, so it's fun to get to finally sit down with somebody live.
Well, and I'm at the Bourbon Life, the new table here, so I feel very honored tonight.
The flights of the round is
flights of the round table.
So thank you.
Yeah. We're actually you're the first guest to actually get to record because last week it was the Bourbon Life crew, man. So you are the first guest to get to record with us. So I tell you, we're going to do things a little differently this week. We've got something that we're going to drink that is from your brand. But before that, we just got something that we're going to start out with. Matt, you want to tell everybody what we got poured up in this first round?
Absolutely. We decided we would warm things up a little bit here with a bottle that I have been waiting to crack for far too long.
Thanks, Matt, for bringing that to me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Nice.
So a nice little birthday crack here. We've got the Wilderness Trail single barrel straight bourbon, and this is the high rye recipe. So if you're familiar with the color schemes, this is the black label. So we're looking 64% corn, 24% rye, 12% malted barley. This one's clocking in at 112 proof.
Ooh.
And this was from a single barrel from the Trifesta, which was the Louder Than Life Bourbon and Beyond and Hometown Rising.
Oh, yeah.
2019.
Nice.
Celebrating those three festivals. So 4 year, 1 month. We were doing it in number 4 ISC char and toasted barrel.
For those of you who don't know, ISC is Independent Stave out of Missouri. Well, I guess out of Kentucky now too, right? So, okay.
And so we figured we would kind of warm it up there.
Yeah. And there's a method to our madness for including Wilderness Trail. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. So, Matt, what do you pick up on the nose? Bill, well, you can jump in here too and tell us what you get on this.
Right away, I get a good, that rye's coming through, getting a lot of graham cracker on the nose.
Well, I'm not surprised, Matt, that you're like, this is Matt's wheelhouse, man, the high rye stuff, right? So
yeah, I get some nice fruit. There's like a juicy fruit component to it, some graham cracker on there as well.
Yeah. Bill, what about you? What do you pick up on that?
Yeah, I get the graham cracker right away.
Yeah.
And it's 112 proof it's coming through.
Yeah.
It's got a little heat on it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
So just having opened it, I think it could use just a little time to air. There's a little bit of alcohol in the nose, but I'm not worried about that.
It's not like singeing my nose hairs, It's not turning me off. It's not I don't want to say repugnant. It's not, it's just not, but it's not like, okay, I don't want to drink this because there's so much alcohol to it. I do pick up that, Matt, you call it juicy fruit. And that's just a great explanation because I can't really pinpoint something that I say, oh yeah, it smells like this or smells like that, but it does have a nice kind of a juicy sweetness to it that I pick up as well. So definitely getting that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of caramel with it as well.
Caramel?
Yeah, of course.
Did you say caramel? How about vanilla?
That's your note.
Yes, Bill. That is my note. Thank you. Yes, caramel and vanilla. So, all right, so we kind of talked about that. So we can set that aside for just a minute. Or we can sip on it too. But all right, Bill. So let's jump in, dive in, and talk about you. So tell our listeners just, a lot of bit. I always say a little bit, but I mean to say a lot of bit. So just tell our listeners about who you are, your background, and then a little bit kind of weave that into how you got in the bourbon industry.
Well, I'll start with, I live in Cincinnati.
Okay.
I am.
We won't hold that against you.
Yeah, I hear you. I own a commercial loading dock and door business. I had the opportunity to start that as a sales guy. I was in my condo of my, unfinished part of my condo basement when I started as a sales guy in that business, and had the opportunity to buy that and partner with our manufacturers. At the time, there was about 3 people in the business.
Yeah.
That was 25 years ago. And so today, I'm part of 8 locations, about 125 people.
Wow.
A lot of service calls. And, along the way, I have a family. I have a daughter and son.
Yeah.
They're now 24, 21, been married. Met my wife, Susie, 27 years here in the next month or so.
Congratulations.
And, when my daughter was looking to go to college, we were checking out different universities, and somebody told us check out Center College down in Danville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
And looked at the school. I really liked it. And I was telling my dad about it, and he said, the McBrayers gave some money to that college. And I was like, who are you talking about, man? And he's like, it was the McBrayer in the whiskey business. Well, I was like, okay, cool. And so I was kind of like looking for the McBrayer scholarship at Center College.
Sure. Well, your daughter, as a McBrayer, would be the perfect recipient of the McBrayer scholarship, right?
And if there was a scholarship, she was really going to look hard at that.
And if you're going to go to Center, a scholarship can definitely help.
It would help there, right? And so, I was looking around, and there wasn't a scholarship, and I just happened to be home that weekend by myself, and I was like, well, who's this guy in the whiskey business? And I started Googling it, and I came across a blog post by Jack Sullivan on prepro.com.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an article about William Harrison McBrayer, and I was like, oh my gosh, I read this article, and the guy was awesome. He was famous, and there was all this great story, and there was all this things with the brands, and I just got obsessed with the story. And so I would say the bourbon business found me versus me finding the business, right?
Nice.
And
now, so your daughter's 24, so this was
this was about 8 years ago.
Okay,
yeah, about 8 years ago. And as I started doing the research, I knew there was a brand called Old McBrayer, and actually it was made in Cincinnati in the late 70s and early 80s. It was bottled there at the National Distiller plant. I didn't grow up in Cincinnati, but I knew about it.
Okay.
And this is just something you knew just through growing up with the last name McBrayer?
Well, my dad was a sales guy back in the 70s, and during Christmas, he'd give a bottle of Old McBrayer to his customers at Christmas time. And next time he saw him, it was so bad they gave it back to him, right? And that's back when they were blending, bourbon, and it was like 85% neutral grain spirits. And,
right.
It wasn't bourbon as we would drink it today, right?
Right.
There's a lot of unopened full bottles from the 70s of Old McBrayer stuff, right? It's so, so I started looking at this, and I don't think I worked for a month. I would go to my office, and I'm just Googling all the stuff about McBrayer whiskey, right? And learning the stories and tracking the brands, and I realized that the trademarks had expired. And so I re-registered the trademarks, and
now who did National Distillers hold the trademark on those, or do you know?
They did.
Okay.
And then when they sold to Jim Beam, Jim Beam just let the brands expire.
Gotcha.
And so re-registered these trademarks. Actually, they got contested a couple times. Once through the Scotch Whisky Association, and I was like,
really?
Why is that? And they said, well, McBrayer's a Scottish name. And they said, if you just put McBrayer whiskey on the bottle, you might mislead the public that it's Scotch versus Kentucky Bourbon. I said, well, all right. So we ended up settling that, and I had to make sure I called it Kentucky Bourbon, and we were good with that, and a couple other things. And so the journey began, right? And as I was learning this, and I'm like, I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to own the family brands and figure out how to make bourbon. And I was sitting in my chair one day when my wife came home, and I was having a drink, and I said, honey, I'm going to get in the bourbon business. And she said, really? I go, yeah, I don't know anything about it. So I'm just going to start drinking an awful lot of it. I'm going to figure it out. And that's how I started in the bourbon business.
That's funny. So did you knew then, though, that McBrayer was what's his relationship? Like great?
Yeah,
or just...
so that's great question.
Yeah.
There was 3 brothers that came over from Scotland to the U.S.
Okay.
One was a William, one was James, and one was David. James and his tree, after the Revolutionary War, came to Kentucky.
Okay.
They were granted some land here. His son William, James's son William, his oldest son, was a surveyor. Came over in the James Herod settlement and started surveying land, fell in love with it, came back over here with his family and his 5 brothers. And his youngest brother, Andrew, had a large family, and William Harrison was one of his sons.
Okay.
So that was a 3rd generation. My tree is from the brother William.
Okay.
And so I'm the 9th generation from William. So I guess
wow,
he's my cousin.
Gotcha.
Right? But
Right.
we're definitely on the same tree.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So when you're doing this and looking at this, was there anybody else in the family, or did you talk to anybody else, cousins or relatives or whatnot, to say, hey, I'm doing this? Was anybody else like, oh, we want to do it too? Or, I mean, did you have any type of internal family issue with that? Or
No, it was, I had a lot of friends said that they'd be lined up to be tasters, right?
Yeah, right. All of a sudden,
I had a lot of new friends.
old college buddies
yeah.
out of the woodwork.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, yeah, I'd love to come over and drink all your stuff.
Yeah, well, we're very fortunate as a family that the McBrayers have been tracing our genealogy for multiple generations now. So,
Yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
we have a genealogy book from the 80s. It's probably 6 or 8 inches thick. And
Wow.
It's
Okay.
been added on now digitally with CDs, and it's pretty remarkable what our family history is, and to have that has been pretty awesome.
Wow.
And so I've had the opportunity to meet with some family historians.
Yeah.
And talk to them and learn some things and picked up a few things and just kept doing more and more research, and it's just remarkable.
So you knew, like you said earlier, I mean, you didn't go into bourbon. I mean, bourbon just kind of found you, and it's like, it just pulled you in, right?
It was, and the reason I got into it was to reintroduce William Harrison McBrayer to the bourbon community.
Yeah.
As a McBrayer, I didn't even know who William Harrison McBrayer was.
Right.
Right. And you can say a lot of different things. The most polite thing I say is he's an iconic original distiller here from Kentucky.
Sure.
Right. I have seen ads that they called him America's greatest distiller, but that's a pretty bold statement to come out and say when you've never heard of the guy. Right.
Right.
And so,
Right.
So I think he's iconic. He is, many people have said he was E.H. Taylor before E.H. Taylor.
Wow.
And
That's a big statement.
E.H. Taylor bought his bourbon when he was getting started. He started in 1844 over in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. I mean, that's an old brand.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no doubt. Very cool. Well, we'll get into the brand a little bit, probably in the next session, or maybe a little bit later here. I'm not sure, but let's jump back to the whiskey a little bit and talk about the bourbon we're drinking this Wilderness Trail. Matt, what are you picking up in terms of the palate on this one?
Well, you caught me mid sip there. Got that nice rye spice coming through right at the start.
Yeah,
it's good, warm, nice cinnamon. Peppercorn on it. It's got a lot of fall, autumn time baking spice. Getting nutmeg and getting clove coming through with it.
Yeah,
a little bit of cardamom near that. So I'm getting a good amount of baking spice. That graham cracker again comes through.
Yeah,
and there's a really nice sweetness, like a long, sweet finish before it dissipates to some more of the lingering rye heat.
Yeah. I agree with that. If Matt didn't tell you, he's
got the taste.
Matt's you listen to the show.
About saying it loud enough that
But with your background in the food industry and working at a bakery, I mean, it makes a difference, man. It really does. So
these guys make such a great bourbon. What I see with this bourbon, I mean, it's 112 proof, but I don't get the burn.
No,
right?
Certainly not.
That sweet mash process really helps you have a nice flavor to your bourbon, but you just don't get that big hug in your chest.
And that's a really cool thing I like about Wilderness Trail is that they use the sweet mash process, which for those of you who don't know, a lot of distilleries use the sour mash process, which is where they take a little bit of the back set. So when they've done a run, they'll take a little bit from the old run and use it to start the new run. But what Wilderness Trail does, and some other people now, they're really going into the sweet mash, which is where they start all over, like brand new. Like they run the distillation process and they empty everything out, clean it out, and start fresh with a brand new batch. And that really does seem, at least in my opinion, and I know when we were at Wilderness Trail and talking to the guys down there, they talked about how it does affect in terms of the Kentucky hug, that you really don't get as much of a burn. And I don't on these sweet mash products like this. I don't get that really powerful burn. And that's the one thing that stood out to me was that, Matt, what was this,
112.
You know, on the nose, initially we talked about picking up the alcohol, but man, on the palate, on the taste on this, that just does not come across as 112 proof. I don't know. Do you guys?
I agree with you.
Matt, I caught you mid-sip again.
I know, you're doing this.
I'm doing it on purpose, man. I'm doing it on purpose. No, just
one of the things I really like about Wilderness Trail's products is I get the heat, but it's not in like the alcohol and burn way. It's not in an offensive, like, whoa, this needs to mellow out a little bit.
Right.
You get actually the flavor from the alcohol, like from the amount that's in there. I think the proof point, there's a nice flavor to it. It's not just burn. It accompanies, like, this is another one that I think has like a kind of a spicy pepper type heat coming along with the proof point on it. And I think they do a great job. I think the sweet mash has a lot to say in that process for me and how I taste it and how it would compare and contrast to something of 4 years and 1 month old in a sour mash, where I think at 112 proof, say, in a sour mash, you might be getting a lot more young alcohol, maybe some of those grassy flavors that we sometimes associate with younger bourbon or younger products. But I think the sweet mash really does a great job of dissipating any of that.
Yeah. And in terms of the taste profile, man, I agree with you. I get that cinnamon that really stuck out to me. The sweetness, it combined, I get that. It's like that cinnamon red hot thing, like a Brock's, those old red hot candies. That's it. I mean, every time I drink, not every time, but when I drink a rye like this, I just love it because it takes me back to being a kid, unwrapping those cinnamon Brocks that my grandma used to give me. I just absolutely loved them. But you get that sweetness, but then you get that cinnamony heat as well. And this really comes across as a lot of heat, but it's not too much. It's a great combination, man. So these guys, I think, have done a great job with this one. So, and the reason we're drinking Wilderness Trail, we can kind of jump into that a little bit. Bill, if you want to tell everybody.
Well, yeah. So when my dad became my partner in this business, as he started to retire, I asked him if he'd help me figure out how we're going to make some bourbon.
Yeah.
And, we went to a still show and realized we went and buy a still and be in the still business, right? And figure out how to make bourbon. So we had the chance to meet Pat and Shane and kind of told them our story and had some ideas on what we wanted to do. And they were very gracious to allow us to be part of their program there and contract a still for us.
Yeah.
And so so they're making our products for us now.
That's great. And so that's been a relationship now for...
Well, this will be 5 years now, right?
Yeah.
That since we did our first batch.
Yeah.
And we wanted to do something a little different, so we started out with some different grains, which I'm sure we'll talk about here after a while. And
I remember that story from when we had dinner. We definitely need to save that.
Yeah, we're gonna save that.
Yeah.
And but we started out really small. I said, well,
Sure.
Can you make one barrel, or can you make a couple barrels? They're like, well, we can make 10 to 12.
Yeah.
And so we said, okay, let's start there.
Yeah.
And so we made just a handful of barrels with them, and that's how we got started. And we're going to drink some of that here in a little bit.
Yeah, but that's very cool because we've not had Pat and Shane on the show, but we've met them several times. We had Jared and Haley on the show from Wilderness Trail. Love those guys. Love the products. Love what they're doing down there in Danville. And the amount of production that they're doing is just insane. I mean,
well, when we first met them, they just had their smaller still going at the time before they expanded. And I mean, they're just remarkable guys, and they're doing a great job, and we couldn't be more happy for their success.
Sure.
And just fortunate that we feel fortunate we were able to connect with them when we did.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I think this might be a good place to take a break, right? Mm-hmm. What do you think, Matt?
I think this is a great place to take a break.
Yeah, because we're right on the verge of getting into the brand and the history, and I think that's going to be a good part 2 and part 3. So we'll come back and we'll talk about the finish on this one as well before we jump into the McBrayer Spirits bourbon. So let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsor, and we'll be back with more with Bill McBrayer from McBrayer Legacy Spirits in just a minute. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
Located just east of Lake Tahoe and the Sierra Nevada mountains, Frey Ranch Distillery was founded by fifth-generation Nevada farmers. Our grain-to-glass bourbon is made using a 4-grain mash bill, including a non-GMO corn, rye, wheat, and barley, all of which is 100% sustainably grown on the 1,500-acre Frey Ranch. And our commitment to excellence shows with a recent gold medal win at the 2020 Whiskeys of the World and USA Spirits competitions. Find out more at www.freyranch.com. All right, everybody, welcome back for round session period, whatever you want to call it, number 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me as always, live in the Bourbon Life studios is my good friend, my Boston Marathon running buddy, my birthday buddy, Matt. What's going on, dude?
Hey, not too much, Mark. We're back here for the second third of the show.
Oh my, wow. That just kind of blew my mind. I had to stop.
Did I say that right?
Yes, you did. I had to stop and think it through, though, mentally. And yes, second, third. I like that.
I guess I've had just enough bourbon to kind of get the wheels turning a little bit.
No, you ran a marathon yesterday, so you're doing marathon math. I know you do that, right? Everybody does, right? You start running all the numbers in your head,
counting down
how fast, and yes.
Oh, and speaking of, I just got to give a quick shout out to Skechers shoes, Skechers Performance. They're helping me out this year, giving me some shoes to wear, and I'm part of their performance ambassador team. So I just want to say thank you to them. And I know it sounds kind of weird that they have a running shoe out, but I really have been really impressed with their products. So if you want to check out Skechers shoes or anything that they have in their running market or just otherwise, I'm really appreciative of their support. But anyway, we're getting back. We've got a great guest with us, and he came back for the second.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out. Well. He's in my basement,
a lot of fun.
Man. He can't.
That's right.
I got the cat gate locked, so he can't get out of the basement, man. He's stuck.
Right. He's not getting out of here without at least giving us a little bit more on
That's right.
McBrayer Legacy Spirits. So we've got Bill McBrayer back with us for the second third. So Bill, you doing all right?
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, having a lot of fun here at the table, and looking forward to second phase here.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, before we jump in, we talked about the nose and the palate on that Wilderness Trail. So let's talk about the finish on that one. I unfortunately finished mine in the first round, but hey, I got the memory for it. So
all right, well, let's hear what you got.
Well, Matt, like you said on the finish, it was still that pepperiness, it wasn't pepper, it was cinnamon to me, the spiciness, and that lingered, that the sweetness mixed in, and it was like that Brock's cinnamon candy for a while. But then the finish just turned back to that cinnamon. There was a spiciness to it. The sweetness to me kind of dissipated. And it just, it wasn't overpowering. It was, like I said before, that it doesn't drink like that 112 proof. I think it drinks lower than that. That maybe the sweet mash is what does it. I don't know. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Great finish on that one for me. So I give it 2 thumbs up. All right, Matt. So what about the...
I gotta agree. I think that the toastiness, remember this was a char and toasted here. So I think I'm picking up some of those toasted flavors, a little bit of marshmallow, definitely the oak coming through.
Yeah.
But then I'm getting, so there's the cinnamon on the spice. You're absolutely right. I get that cinnamon coming down the line. But I'm also picking up some ginger. Kind of some of that mouth heat from like some fresh ginger. If you would take like some fresh grated ginger, maybe even like some sort of a ginger molasses cookie.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah,
making me hungry, dude.
You can tell that we're getting into the autumn baking season here. The old boys
Matt's gonna start bringing us cookies every week, Matt. That's your responsibility, man. Bring us some delicious cookies. Bill, what about you? What did you pick up on that?
Yeah, I get a lot of the same notes. What I get though is I get it in the back of my in the back of my tongue. Right? I get it a little sweeter on the front, a little more in the back. Kind of stays with you a little bit. Nice finish. And it's really pleasant, right? Especially this time of year, you start getting those colder evenings. Sit outside with that 112 proof. Drink and could be a little dangerous.
I agree, and because it does not drink like 112 proof, and that would be one that set around a fire, and before you know it, you're like, oops. But thanks for bringing that, Matt. Man, thanks for bringing it and sharing. Yeah, definitely enjoyed that. So, Bill, let's jump back in now. Let's talk a little bit about W.H. McBrayer, the man himself. So, can you share with our listeners, because you mentioned it. I like the way you said that earlier in the first round, was that you felt compelled. After you did your research and you started, you were consumed with this, but you,
to say the least,
but you really wanted to bring the story of this man that time had really forgotten. I mean, for lack of a better way to say it, but you wanted to bring his story back to the bourbon drinkers and let people know who he was. So tell us who he was.
Well, he started out in the family merchant business, right? His sister, which had a pretty big impact on his life, she was about 10 years older, and her husband had passed away, and he was a merchant. And the brothers ran the merchant store in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. And he was 18, started the store business, right? But if you can imagine in 1840s, right? It was like maybe a store or two, right? That was it. And so he started in that business, and later bought out his brothers, became a merchant there in Lawrenceburg, and he bought his first land for his distillery in 1844, and so started his distillery. It was fairly small at the time, but I mean, when we talk about legacy brands and different things going on, very few go back to 1844.
Yeah, that's funny. I was actually just thinking, like, who was around in 1844?
People, Beam says that they go back to the 1700s, but there was a break, obviously, in what they did, and they rebuilt back whenever.
Michter's is what, like the first?
I guess Buffalo Trace was, not Buffalo Trace itself, but distilling on that site was, and we just got that book from Paul Picoult, that he sent us,
that's right.
the new Buffalo Trace Distillery book, which you've already read, Bill.
I have read that one. I mean, when you look at Old Forester, right, it started in 1870.
Right.
Well, that was 26 years later.
Yeah. So, Matt, that's a good point, man. I mean, really not. I mean, that's a good point. Solid point. So
yeah, and so he started out in 1844, and it started out as the W.H. McBrayer Distillery. It was number 44 at the time, and he was a merchant, and then later became the first judge in Anderson County, and that name, the judge, stuck with him the rest of his life, and later became a state senator. And it was around the sometimes the 1850s, he started to pay a little bit more attention to his distillery, and started to expand it, and started getting bigger, right? A little bit bigger. Started paying more attention to it. It was in 1873 is the first time that I found that he won a gold medal for the best whiskey in the world in Vienna, Austria.
Oh, wow.
And later again in 1876 at the Philadelphia Centennial, he won a gold medal. But he was one of the first Kentucky brands to be on the international stage.
Sure.
And it's been said that he turned the crown heads in Europe from Scotch to Kentucky whiskey or bourbon.
Well,
right?
I mean, you won a gold medal in Vienna. That says a lot.
In 1873, right?
Yeah.
And it was somewhere around the time he later wanted to start to distance his name from the brand a little bit. And they, at the urging of his wife, they changed the name to Cedarbrook, which was from the stream or the creek that ran through the distillery.
What I mean, any reasoning behind that, or
there's a lot of different speculation. He was a very devout Presbyterian.
Okay,
very involved in church.
I was going to ask you about that, if you knew anything about his religious background.
Very devout. I mean, built the church there in Lawrenceburg. They say brick by brick, right?
Gotcha.
And the temperance movement was getting bigger and bigger, right? He was a politician. Right. And so, but later in his career, towards the 1880s or so, the trademark laws weren't as strong back then, right? So a lot of people were trying to pirate the name and do some. So he actually ended up putting his name back on all the bottles It was W.H. McBrayer Cedar Brook Bourbon.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so he, he was very influential in the bourbon community.
Yeah.
One of his longtime employees was T.B. Rippey.
Uh-huh.
And somewhere around the late 1850s, he helped T.B. Rippey start his first distillery. So he helped him buy one as a partner, allowed T.B. Rippey to buy him out after a year, which today is now Wild Turkey.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
right?
Just so people know who that. Yeah.
Right. And so his next master distiller for 20 years was W.B. Saffel, which then he helped him start a distillery later in his career in the 1880s, so 20 years later.
Yeah.
Right, which is now another brand owned by Wild Turkey.
Wild Turkey,
right?
Yeah. And they've got that, what's it called, the Barons of Bourbon, or the
Whiskey Barons.
The Whiskey Barons collection. So they got the Rippey, they've got the WB Saffel, the smaller 375s.
Yeah. What's the third? There's a third one in that.
Bond and
Lillard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think they were supplying yeast to McBrayer.
Were they really?
In the
Okay.
early days. Yeah.
How funny.
And met some of the Bond family when we've been in Lawrenceburg.
Wow, very cool.
The Lawrenceburg community has been just wonderful.
Yeah.
We had the opportunity to kind of do our launch at the T.B. Rippey house.
Okay.
Did a speaking engagement over there.
Yeah, that's right.
And
I did see that
the
on Instagram.
community there have just been wonderful. And the history there is just remarkable.
Nice.
And then we talked a little bit earlier. His sister Mary, who I think was very influential in helping him getting the merchant's business back when he was 18 years old.
Yeah.
She had a son. His name was C.M. Deadman, and he was actually orphaned when he was about 6.
Wow.
And was later adopted by his uncle William Harrison McBrayer, and for his wedding present, gave him the money and land to start his own distillery, which became Kentucky
Owl.
Right?
That's right. Which was resurrected recently by his great something grandson, Dixon Deadman. Yeah.
And so, I mean, just those three. Many people have said he was E.H. Taylor before E.H. Taylor.
Sure.
Right. E.H. Taylor used to buy his whiskey.
Wow.
Which allowed us to learn some things along the way from different things we found between communications between the two of them.
Yeah. And speaking of, so let's jump back and let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about what we're drinking. You kind of laid the groundwork on the history of who the judge was. So tell us what we got poured up here on the second and third round that we're going to be drinking.
Yeah. So this is our first release. We did this in April. This is a 4-year and almost 5-month bourbon.
Okay.
It was our first batch of 10 barrels that we produced
Okay.
at Wilderness Trail.
Yeah.
We contract distilled with those guys to make a special mash bill for us to honor the judge. And this one is an 88.4% corn, Bloody Butcher corn bourbon. 5.6%, I think it is, rye, and 5.6% barley.
Okay.
This is barrel strength at 103.6 proof, blend of 5 barrels. We went into the barrel at 105 proof.
Okay.
We wanted to honor some old traditions by starting out that way.
Nice. So Matt, have you worked on this a little bit over there? Tell me.
Yeah, I have.
What do you pick up on the nose?
The nose is really soft. It's not. There's no real prominent flavor that's jumping out, and it's
I've got one.
So I pick up there's some nougat popping out for me. Definitely the corn, just the uniqueness of the grain on this Bloody Butcher corn.
Yeah.
Really pops out for me. It's really, really pleasant.
Yeah.
Just really soft. A lot of times when we talk about getting corn on the nose, sometimes you're like, oh, that's
right.
a lot of corn.
Yeah.
But no, this certainly isn't the case. And I almost pick up a little vanilla and a little mint coming through as well with it.
Okay. Butterscotch, I mean, is what jumps out at me. Just like a Werther's can, talking about the red hot cinnamon disc, the Brock's cinnamon disc from a kid. This makes me think, smelling this makes me think of the Werther's original, or whatever they were called, the butterscotch. Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, when we've done these, right, everybody has their own different smells, right?
Sure.
I get the butterscotch.
Yeah,
I get that. It's such a prominent note to me. Get some little bit of chocolate in there.
Okay.
You might get a little bit of some dark cherries, right?
Okay.
A little bit, but the butterscotch I think is overwhelming, which is a very prominent note of old whiskeys.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. That's going back to the heritage and following. We'll talk about the proof here in a few minutes as well. But yeah, going back to these older whiskeys, that butterscotch was a dominant note in a lot of those. So it's very unique that you guys have been able to recreate that with this to pay homage to the judge and the old brands. I really like that. So Matt, do you get butterscotch at all?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Especially now that
we've
suggested,
subliminally put that in your head.
There's a whole lot in there, a lot of butterscotch, almost like a pulled taffy type aroma for me too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely got a very nice note. So talking about the mash bill, you mentioned that, and you also mentioned that there were some communications that you came across. So the mash bill, I understand, was actually based on information that you tracked down. Can you talk about that? What you found?
Yeah, because this is a unique mash bill.
Yeah,
I've not heard too much about it. So you had in your digging in W.H. McBrayer, you came across what? So
we did. Yeah, there was pretty interesting. There was back when blogging was probably very new.
Yeah,
back about 2000, I think it was 5.
Okay.
There was a blog post from Michael Beach on this bourbon blog, and it was Chuck Crowdery and some of those other bourbon guys, right? And he had this letter when he was at the Filson Society at the time, right? And he had some of the files from E.H. Taylor, and there was a letter in there from 1870 from William Harrison McBrayer to E.H. Taylor.
Yeah.
And he was going to sell him some of his whiskey to help pay some of the taxes that were due at that time, because you had to pay taxes before you actually bottled whiskey back then. The government really wanted to get their money back then. And
don't they still?
and it hasn't changed much.
It hasn't changed much.
And on the back of that letter, it had this 88% mash bill, 8-corn mash bill.
Huh.
And as they got into the blog post, they were like, wow, that's an interesting mash bill, and somebody should probably try to make that, and they should go into the barrel at a low barrel entry proof like they did back then, and it kind of gave us the blueprint, right? To launch our brand, right? And we wanted to do something that was honoring him and our heritage, right? We didn't want to just go out and say, well, we'll go get some sourced whiskey and stick his name on it. We wanted to do something special, right? And we want to do something unique. And my dad knew a guy that was in Ohio that was growing this Bloody Butcher red corn, and they would use it for some cornmeal and some different things, and it just had so much flavor to it. And they said, "Man, that would make some great whiskey, we think." Yeah. And so when we asked Pat and Shane, we said, "Hey, what do you think?" They said, "Would it taste any good?" They said, "Oh yeah, it tastes fine." I'm like, well, how do you really know? How do you know? Like, you want me to buy some? I'm going to make it, but how do you know? And they said, it'll be fine, Bill. Yeah. Right? Pat and Shane, they would know.
Sure.
Of course. Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. So we made 10 barrels, right? That was little as we could make, but we just wanted to learn, and we wanted to just figure it out and make that part of our journey.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah. So they laid those down for you guys
that was going to be 2016 in December.
All right.
And so then when we wanted to wait at least 4 years, right? They said, don't bottle it until 4 years at minimum, right?
Right.
And we're so happy we did. And
Yeah.
we're like, oh, I think it tastes good, Pat. What do you think? You got to wait, Bill, right? And so...
that's like the Christmas Eve for every kid ever, like waiting for Christmas morning to come. And I appreciate that in wanting to really pay tribute to him. So you found his old mash bill, or this mash bill associated with him, and you put it down and said, we're going to make this. This is going to be him. We're going to do it. And so then you lay it down and you wait.
And
so
we wait.
Here you've got all this history, all this, everything built up. You're so excited for it, and you wait.
And we wait. And every year we would make some more, right? Every year we'd make a little bit more and a little bit more, and now we've got, we're going to make a couple 100 barrels this year, right?
Oh, okay.
And we continue because we like it, and it tastes good, and it's something that's unique and different, and and we're real happy with how everything has come together.
So, Bill, my biggest question is: have you gone back to work? Or
Yes, I am working. Yes, I am working. And you know, that loading dock and door business has just been a crazy run for the last couple of years, like with the whole shutdown, and then now the industry's going crazy. So
Sure.
I'm working my tail off, but I get to work so I
Still
can
get to have
maybe
fun
make
and
bourbon.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah, no doubt. So you guys, you chose Wilderness Trail. You met Pat and Shane and talked to them, and you were like sold. So
Oh, yeah.
Now, did your daughter? Did she end up going to Center?
She did not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she
I'm
did not. She went to Miami of Ohio, graduated. She's working. So
Yeah, I was just
that
wondering
helps.
because Center is in Danville, which is obviously
It is.
where
It's-
Wilderness Trail's there. So I just wondered if that connection was still.
You
there
know,
or not.
it's just kind of crazy that we ended up getting connected with Pat and Shane because we learned about a story in Center College that was actually a little bit different because back in the 1880s, he donated like $25,000 then to a school called Central College. But Central College later merged with Center College.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of how we learned it, which today that'd be like $600,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a lot of money. Yeah, no doubt.
And then we ended up getting connected with these guys at Wilderness Trail in Danville, Kentucky, and just the little things that have happened along the way. You're just like, man, I think we're really meant to do this.
Yeah, it's like serendipitous.
It really has been.
I mean, seriously, it's like the doors are opening because they're meant to be opened.
And you just next thing you know, you turn over another rock and you find a little gem, and you're just like, oh wow, look at that part of the story, and here's another part of the story, and you just keep trying to build upon it, and you know, starting out as an entrepreneur, right? And I'm an entrepreneurial guy, right? So and I love that part of it, and it's a journey, right? And so many people are like, oh, what are you going to do with your bourbon? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going to keep going with it, right?
Yeah.
And I look at this as a 25-year journey, not just a, you know, I'm going to do this, I hope, the rest of my life, and I'm going to do the best I can to put together some great bourbon for everybody, and with my family, and really just do the best we can to honor the legacy of all the McBrayer brands that have been formed here in Kentucky.
No, that's great. So you got the mash bill from the back of a letter.
Yep.
So, and Pat and Shane were like, yeah, sure, we can do it. No problem.
Oh yeah, they can make
Even though
anything.
you're like,
they're scientists, right?
88.4 corn, 5.8 rye, 5.8 barley, which is a very obviously unique mash bill. I've never seen it before, so
it's a legacy style mash bill.
Yeah, okay.
And that's kind of how we look at it. And
now the Bloody Butcher corn though, that wasn't necessarily in the letter, right? It was just a decision because it was a kind of an heirloom type of grain.
We're talking about 1870. I don't think they had number 2 yellow dent corn back then the way they have it today, right? And so how do you do something that kind of honors the time frame, right? And we're like, what about this heirloom grain? And they're like, yeah, that, you know, and we didn't know anybody at the time that was doing it. There was some guy in St. Louis that we heard about through Pat and Shane that was doing it. Obviously, there's been some more people doing it today. Yeah. And they said, yeah, it makes good bourbon. Right. All right, cool. Let's do it. Let's try it. You know, and that's how we started.
So the 105 going into the barrel, you know, so everybody knows, obviously, to be a bourbon, you can't go into the barrel at higher than 125 proof. But a lot of distilleries go in at 125. Some go in at like 110, like Maker's Mark does 110. But you guys go in at 105, which is a lot lower.
Yeah, back in the 1800s, you know, they would barrel whiskey between 90 and 105, right?
Yeah,
because they wanted to drink it right out of the barrel.
Right.
And so, you know, that was some advice that was given in that blog post from Michael Veach, right, about 105. And I think Michter's goes in about 103, but I don't know of a lot of them that go in at 105.
That's what I'm trying to think of people. Matt, do you remember? I can't think of anybody.
I know
Maker's
Trail goes in at 110, right?
Yeah, Maker's,
on their bourbons.
Yeah, Maker's goes in at 110, pretty sure. But other than that, I'm not sure of a lot of people that go in.
Woodford go in at.
I think it's a little higher.
I think it is too. Yeah. So.
And so this is barrel strength at 103.6. Yeah. So I mean, some of our barrels came out at 107. Some of them came out at 102 after 4.5 years.
That's what I was going to ask because. You know, it goes in at 105. This bottle is a blend of barrels, and it came back at
103.6.
103.64.
Yeah.
So it obviously the combination it dropped a little proof. So you had barrels that lost a little bit of
we kept it low in the rick house, and we did an inaugural release, right? And we did a box, and we serial numbered all the bottles, and we came out with 1,075 bottles.
Okay.
And we sold them out on our website through our Legacy Club within a few days.
Wow.
And so it never made it to a store. And we have McBrayers from all over the world that have been contacting us, and they're just so happy that we're doing what we can to bring back our family heritage.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. It's funny because I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, and there was a really popular McBrayer, Terry McBrayer, who was an attorney, but he was an attorney here in Lexington.
Yeah.
But he actually started in Greenup County, which is where I'm from.
Terry's a wonderful man.
So you knew Terry?
We've had an opportunity to meet Terry. Terry passed away a little bit ago.
Right.
And
now, is he family? I mean, is he? I'm assuming
he is actually from the same family tree that the same brother that I'm from. And
is
we
he
talked
really?
about that,
Okay.
from William.
Yeah.
And so, he was a wonderful man.
Well, when I was in law school, my first clerking position was with McBrayer's firm here in Lexington. So I actually clerked for the. I didn't work under Terry, but I knew him just because of being originally from Eastern Kentucky, Greenup County. So, but Terry was a great guy.
And the basketball arena at Eastern Kentucky is McBrayer Arena.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's all right. That's very cool. Well, guys, I tell you what, we're at a good breaking point, I think. Don't you think, Matt?
Yeah.
See, I'm getting Matt's opinion on this just to see.
Look at that.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
I feel so valued.
You are valued, Matt. Right here, look, I'm going to draw a picture of my heart right here. And you're right there in the center.
Put it down.
Yeah, all right. Let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Bill McBrayer from McBrayer Legacy Spirits in just a second.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
Spirits of French Lick crafts their spirits using only the finest agricultural product that has defined character, following their motto, respect the grain. They lead the way in representing the quality of the Hoosier artisan distilling process while paying tribute to its inseparable past. By implementing best practices from those early times, combined with modern touches, Spirits of French Lick has created a truly unique place in the industry. Spirits of French Lick products are distributed throughout Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri, and can also be purchased online through Sealbox at sealbox.com. Visit spiritsoffrenchlick.com to learn more information and make sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram. All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final session, period, round, whatever you want to call it, of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, live in the Bourbon Life studios tonight is my friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing?
Hey,
I didn't say good friend. I'm sorry. My good friend, Matt.
Oh, thank you.
Matt, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing so great. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good, man. Drinking some great whiskey, having some great conversations. I love it when we can all get together around the flights of the round table.
I know this was the original business model.
It was. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, we got all of 7 episodes into doing it this way, and then
COVID
pandemic.
Was like, nope. But I mean, we lucked out, man, because there's no way we could have traveled to all the places and got to spend time with all the people we've spent time with.
Our poor listeners would have had to listen to so many shows of just you and I, since we wouldn't have been able to book guests.
Sitting around, Bill. The first show we did was upstairs where we were earlier, at that granite countertop in the kitchen with all the stainless steel appliances, right? So Matt's got this puffy, swishy jacket on, and we're sitting there and we're talking, and there's all this echo, and every time he moves, you can hear his jacket go squish, 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 squish. So the first episode was just echoes, and it was not good.
But you had to get started,
right?
That's right. And here you are.
Yeah, 88 episodes. Episode 88 right here. That's right.
And
yeah,
it's just a journey
with a fancy table. That's
right?
the best part right there, right?
Well, I love listening to your show, and I listen to it every week.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that, Bill, very much, because we love it. I'm a lifelong Kentuckian, except for those 2 years I had to say I spent in Missouri. But other than that, I mean, I just love being able to promote bourbon and the brands and in Kentucky, and we obviously have other people from outside of the state on, but to me, it's all about the passion of the brand or of the bourbon and sharing my love of the state with everybody that I can.
Well, over the last several years, getting a chance to spend more time in Kentucky and do our best to honor these Kentucky legacy Kentucky brands, right?
Yeah,
it's a beautiful state.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah,
you got a good football team this year.
Oh, 6-0 right now.
Yeah,
yeah. This is coming out on Friday, the day before we play number one Georgia at Georgia. Goodness gracious, we're a 24.5 point underdog at this point. But hey, this isn't the sports podcast, right? This is the Bourbon Life Podcast. So let's get back into talking about the bourbon. And we've got Bill McBrayer from McBrayer Legacy Spirits. I'm sorry, Matt, I stole your thunder. You usually do that. So
that's fine. So I'll kind of steal yours here.
There you go.
Bill, I think it's been really interesting that it seems in your journey to really do justice to the judge here, it's almost like you have followed in a lot of the same footsteps that he made in modern times. So you've made a lot of connections. So he gave money to Center College in Danville. You ended up distilling down in Danville. He laid way to the Dedman family, and now you've also hooked up with the Dedman family to come up with your final blend that we're drinking now in this barrel strength. Can you talk a little bit more about not just that relationship that you've made, but it seems like you're really you're trying to follow his footsteps and really make a business come alive from and through him.
Yeah, I didn't have any expectations of this, right? It was really meant to just honor him. It was kind of like a hobby, right? Yeah. And I try to golf once in a while, and that's a hobby, but it cost me a lot of money, right? And I hope this one, I was like, man, if I could just break even, have a lot of fun, make some bourbon, hang out with my dad,
right?
We get to do this together, and that's been a lot of fun doing that. He's 74, and it's just been real special to do that with him as a family thing. And as you go down this path, right, this entrepreneurial little journey, right, which is now my new bourbon life, right? And this is my journey, right? And every time you kind of turn over one stone, you find out something new, and then you kind of dig in a little bit, and the history is so deep, right? And I had the chance to meet Dixon. We went over there, and the bourbon was 1 year old, and had him try it, and he's like, I think you got some nice tasting bourbon here. And every year I'd always just try to get his opinion, and he's been a great mentor. Yeah, what a great guy. Just a good person, right? And really has a fantastic palate, right? And so when we were kind of going back and forth, it's like, all right, now we're going to have these barrels. How are we going to do this? Like, are we going to do a bottled in bond, or are we going to proof it down? Right. What do we do?
And these are with the first 10 barrels.
Our first 10 barrels.
And you guys, I mean, because you are at 4 years, a little bit over 4 years. Yeah. So it could have been, and you were at 105 proof, but it dropped down a little bit, blended to 103. So you could have knocked it down three more points and been
bottled and
bond.
Yeah. Thrown all 10 barrels in and had a big bottled and bond run.
Yeah. Could have. Yeah. And so, but by doing it at barrel strength, right, it helps tell our story, right? At 105 proof. And so what we did is we went over and said, hey, Dixon, would you be interested in helping us figure out what we're doing? And so he was great, and it was kind of a fun story, right? I mean, we took our 10 barrels and everybody sampled them, and we came up with our best 5 and kind of our second best 5, and so we took those 5 and we blended them together and tasted better than the other 5, right? But Dixon, he just kind of looked at us and said, "Here, just let me try a couple things," right? And he grabs a couple of the bad, not as good ones, and 3 of the good ones, and puts them together, and it was better. Right? Yeah. And then he said, let's do one more thing, and he took another one and he put them together, and it was even better, right? And the 5 together was better than any one by itself. Wow. And he's just what a fascinating process to be part of with him, and he's great, and I try to lean on him as much as I can, and it's been a start of, I hope, of a nice friendship and relationship with him.
Well, now you guys, I guess, are sort of related.
We are.
Because,
we're
you're
distant cousins of some sort, right?
Yeah, there you go. Because the judge, McBrayer, I keep looking at the box. I want to make sure I get the W.H. McBrayer. Adopted CM.
CM Devon, his great grandfather.
Yeah, so there is a family. Actually, there is a family connection there. So that's really cool, though. I don't know Dixon. I've not had the opportunity to meet him in person, so I've heard great things about him. And obviously, the Kentucky Ale brand, he and the Carters were obviously hugely successful with that. To the tune of steadily buying them out for, well, whatever amount of money it was, but the skills that he has obviously have paid off in aces for him. So that's great. So, but that's really cool that you're able to get that relationship. So, I guess, Matt, we should probably talk about the palate on the McBrayer bourbon. So what do you get, man?
It's got a lot of, surprisingly, a nice little bit of spice up front from the low 5.8%.
5.8. Isn't that crazy?
Rye. It has a nice little bit of peppercorn, nice little bit of rye coming from, kind of the herbal parts of the rye coming through. I got
herbal too, man. I was like,
just that big spice bomb.
Yeah.
Of course, with that low percent, but you can tell that the rye's in there. Then that corn, that heirloom corn grain, the Bloody Butcher, and the percent that's in here, it's really great. I get like nice hot buttered cornbread, thinking straight from the oven.
Yeah.
Really, really great corn that comes through. There's, again, I'm picking up like a little bit of mint, little vanilla, and some nougat on it as well, coming down the line.
And I thought I was crazy because I was picking up mint, and I'm like, how am I picking up mint at 5.8%? But I was getting a little bit of mint on that. So I'm glad you said that, Matt.
Yeah.
Because it reaffirms that I'm not crazy.
The finish is, we're not at the finish yet.
We're not at the finish. Let's hold that. Yeah. You need to back it up a little bit. Bill, what about you? I mean, this is your baby, man. So what do you, in terms of the palate, what do you get when you drink this?
Yeah, I get a lot of the same notes. For me, it's uncut, right? Unfiltered.
Right.
And so it's got a really nice velvety mouthfeel.
That's what I was going to say.
Like a nice mouthfeel to it.
And this is it's non-chill filtered too, right?
Correct.
So everything,
we just took it out of the barrel.
Took it right out of the barrel and blended. Yeah, which is great. And I do get a nice, almost like a creaminess, a mouthfeel to Matt. Do you get that? I mean, is that okay?
It's got a really nice oily creaminess that covers the mouth, covers the tongue really well. It doesn't. It's not harsh in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it in the glass, I mean, it's got some nice legs to the glass,
that's what I was noticing too. It's like it clings.
It's nice and thick, and it's not, real thin or whatever you want to say, right?
Yep. So. I agree with that. So working with the yeast experts, or at least Dr. Pat Heiss, the doctorate and whatever else he is in yeast. So you guys came up with you found the recipe. So you got the mash bill. You decided to pay homage to them with the low proof, the 105 barrel entry proof. The yeast. I'm just curious, how did you guys decide on what type of yeast to use for this?
They said they had this yeast that was a legacy heirloom yeast from that part of Kentucky. I mean, we're within 30 miles of Lawrenceburg over in Danville. Right. And so they said, hey, this should work really well. We're like, you're the experts, right? No problem. And then they helped us find a farmer who's growing the corn right there in Danville for us. Okay. And so there wasn't anybody growing Bloody Butcher corn right around the distillery at the time, and so we were able to get some seed and use that there. And I think this year we're growing some about 40 acres of Bloody Butcher corn. Okay. Which it's just more expensive corn. Right, you just don't get the yield that you get today from modern corn. Right. I think the stalks are like 14 foot tall, and you get one ear of corn. And so it's kind of fascinating, really, and you can understand why they don't make that corn. It's a sweet corn, actually. Okay. And it's an old Indian corn. That was grown here in Kentucky. Right. And so they've been able to help us, make these connections and help us go through that process.
Which, I mean, and that makes perfect sense because, back in the 1840s, 50s, you would think that a corn that, had been here that was indigenous, with the people, that would be an ideal corn. And it could have been what they used. Who knows, right?
You don't know.
But... Right. But it makes sense. I mean, and then to get the yeast. So I'm not going to get too in depth on the yeast, but I'm just curious. I mean, did they actually cultivate the yeast from a wild strain, or do you know if it was something?
I think it's part of their massive library.
I was going to say they've
right?
got like thousands and thousands or millions of.
They have a lot of yeast, right? And those guys are they are experts, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're scientists. And I said, hey, this will taste pretty good. We're like, okay,
we'll do it.
We'll try it.
That'll work. But that's what we talked about earlier, Matt. It was funny, talking about like Christmas. I just can't imagine what it's like to, you lay this down, you put it in a barrel, and you go taste it, and you're like, oh yeah, this is really good. Can we go ahead and they're like, yeah, no, maybe not.
I mean, just the distillate was just so clean, right? And you're like, this is kind of cool,
right?
And you can't put bad distillate in a barrel and it's going to taste better, right?
I would be really curious to try this off the still.
Yeah, I would too.
Oh yeah, we can do that.
All right. It's a deal.
Yeah. Right. And we picked like the next level barrel up from International State Company. So we got a number 4 char here on this barrel.
Gotcha.
It's the premium barrel, if you will, right? So we're using, corn that you don't really use. It kind of costs a little bit to get the corn. It's a little bit more, right?
Sure.
The premium barrel, the sweet mash process, right, that they do.
Right.
The low barrel entry proof, which again just costs more, right?
Yeah,
because you're just not going to cut it and get more barrels or
right.
bottles, right? And but that's not what it was about for us, right? It was to do something to honor him and to honor his legacy, and this is what we started with.
Yeah,
it's been a lot of fun.
No, that makes sense. I mean, that's great. So, in terms of product, so you talked earlier, you're going to put down how many barrels?
A couple hundred of this one this year.
Okay.
We're working on some other mash bills that are unique for us, and trying to do that with Wilderness Trail as well. And we have our other brands, right? Old McBrayer.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So,
right?
So obviously, going back to the trademarks you talked about earlier, I mean, there were other brands that the judge had. So
William Harrison had Cedarbrook as well, which we talked about a little bit, changed the brand there. But it was actually his second cousin, Captain J.H. McBrayer, John McBrayer.
Okay.
He was a captain in the Mexican-American War, led the Salt River Tigers to a big battle down there from Lawrenceburg. It was pretty instrumental in the war, I guess. He started the old McBrayer distillery. He was a distiller as well. Started his first one in 1848 there in Lawrenceburg, the J.H. McBrayer distillery. He later started the old McBrayer distillery in New Market, Kentucky.
Okay.
And that brand became a really big brand through Prohibition, and and William Harrison actually bought it from him a few years after he had started it, who then later sold it to E.H. Taylor. And so we have those 3 family brands, right? Old McBrayer, W.H. McBrayer is how he started, and then the Cedarbrook brand.
Okay.
And so, the Cedarbrook brand, after it was known as the most famous brand in the world.
Really?
When Julius Kessler had bought it, and the Whiskey Trust had bought it, on the bottle it said, and we had the opportunity to try a bottle from 1896 over at the Bardstown Bourbon Company in that vintage collection. And right on the bottle it says it is the most famous brand in the world.
Interesting.
And
Matt, next time we go to Bardstown Bourbon, we know what we're asking for a sample of.
Yeah, exactly.
It's $1,600 an ounce.
Oh, Matt, forget that.
I'm just going to
We got a sample though.
Put it on your tab.
Put it on the Bourbon Life tab.
But it was great. They were very gracious to allow us to at least have a sample of it, and it was really special to do that and be part of that.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're working on some new mash bills. We really like that low barrel entry proof. We think that's very instrumental to our brands, and we're going to try to do some more things that are unique and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, very cool. So let's talk about the bottle and the branding of everything. I mean, this is the first time I've seen it all. This is really, really nice. I mean, you got a beautiful box that it comes in. You got a beautiful bottle, beautiful label. Can you talk about that? I mean, how you came up with the concept for all of that?
As we found some old bottles, when it was the W.H. McBrayer brand, before it was Cedarbrook, he always had his monogram on the bottle. And it was at one time, it was very ornate, and it was really crazy from the early 1800s. Right. And then as it got older, and this particular monogram that we have, which has really become part of the McBrayer brand, the MCB, monogram was a bottle, something we found on one of his bottles, and we got connected with Molly Green over at One Fold here in Lexington, and she's got a lady that her partner is Lauren Harris, and when we started to try to get our story put together, right, and going through that process with her, she's done a wonderful job on helping us really put down on a website and in words, who we are and what we're doing and who he was and our family history, and it's pretty neat to go from an idea one day to having all these different stories,
right,
to being able to put it down to tell the story in something that makes sense to everybody,
right,
and that's what's really cool, right? When 8 years ago, there was this crazy idea, I'm going to be in the bourbon business, right? and then you go through and you get the chance to look at our website and you get to see some of the blog stories that we've put together, and you get to see the bottle and you see how everything has come together.
Yeah.
They've been a great partner in helping us do that.
Very nice. And it is. It's a beautiful packaging, beautiful box. I mean, everything is just very elegant the way you've done that. So you will continue then with this W.H. McBrayer brand?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is our flagship brand.
Okay.
As of today, right now.
Gotcha.
Right. It's going to be a while before we have a lot of new things.
Okay.
We are working on an old McBrayer release. Now that will probably be a source bourbon, right?
Right.
That we'll do and we'll do some kind of bottle that's an old bottle design from probably pre-Prohibition. I mean, we have some great stories with that brand. It was actually seen in the movies Untouchables and Deadwood, the show Deadwood, and it's the brand that I think most of the McBrayers know.
Right.
But I mean, this is our flagship product today.
And you don't want the old McBrayer brand, though, to be associated necessarily with the 1960s, 70s.
No, we hope that this will definitely be better than that stuff. I can guarantee you that.
But that's cool because I'm a big fan of the show Deadwood, and it's always fun to try to, I love to try to stop, the frame and see what bottles they're drinking. So that's really cool, though. You were able to find footage, from movies that featured what is going to be your product, basically.
Yeah, and it's just been a great journey, right? And I think we're just getting started, and it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, my dad and I do this together. My mom and my wife, they both help out, with different things, and we're shipping, products, like swag products to people all over the country.
Sure.
Right? Getting on our website, getting some swag, and who knows where it'll go, right? And you just, like I said, you just have to get started, and we just have the thing about bourbon, which I had no idea, right? It's a long process.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, sure.
And but again, if you look at your business and if you're doing it for all the right reasons, to do it for a long time, right? It's not just a quick thing to see if you can flip a brand or whatever people are trying to do today, right? And just trying to honor your family legacy, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, that was going to kind of be my next question. When we get close to closing it out, I like to ask, what's the future look like for you and for your brand, for McBrayer? But you kind of alluded to that. But.
Yeah, we're just going to continue to put back as much as we can. Yeah. Right. We're just a small family business. Right. Trying to find our way in this whiskey world that's gotten kind of crazy the last few years. And I unfortunately, when I started this, it was just kind of getting started. And I feel like I've gotten kind of caught up in the wash with all these new brands getting started and all these people doing different things. Right. And we're just doing it to honor our family. Yeah. Right. And we're going to continue to put back as much as we can. And we're going to grow this thing slowly, and we're going to have some fun. And I hope that we'll always have products that people will trust.
No, that's great. So no intentions though to start or build your own distillery or anything down the road, or is that never say never?
You never want to say never, right? Okay. But there are a lot of people making a lot of great whiskey here in Kentucky. Sure. Right. And we are always going to be Kentucky brands. Yeah. We are not going to go source whiskey from somebody else that's not in Kentucky. Right. These are legacy Kentucky brands, and we're going to be true to Kentucky.
Good.
We're going to do our best to have as much of the product here in Kentucky at all times.
Nice.
And then we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, very nice. So let's get the thoughts in terms of the finish, Matt, because you're going to jump into that. I don't think we talked about that, right?
Well, it seems like the product here, or the problem, is you didn't even come to market and you already sold out on your first release.
Yeah, how awful is that?
Yeah. So I hope that there is a lot more coming in the future.
Well, the next year or two are going to be pretty small releases still, right? But we've started to put back more and more every year, right? And the Legacy Club continues to build every day. And so we would expect that the Legacy Club will probably buy these products out for the next couple years. And but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And so explain the Legacy Club so people know what that is.
Yeah. So we wanted to really try to connect with our fans. And so in order to do that, if you go to our website, McBrayerLegacySpirits.com, we have a Legacy Club to sign up on, so we can send you newsletters and updates and kind of what's happening and things on a regular basis.
Okay, great. So Matt, back to the finish. What do you think?
So the finish on this, I'm getting some of the red fruits are coming through. Getting some plum is coming through. A little bit of fig, some of the nice dark stone fruits, a little bit of like currant, or maybe like a wine or distilled grape. Mm-hmm. And then I also get like some mocha or some chocolate or cocoa coming through on the end as well with it. It's just got this really, really nice, like very savory, luxurious finish.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's a great finish, and I still get some of the spiciness, which just surprises me. And the length of the finish, I'm just kind of shocked that it continues to linger. It's a really nice finish. Bill, what about you? What do you?
Yeah, I think kind of a chocolate covered dark cherry kind of note.
I can see that.
I think that's kind of similar with what you were tasting. Is kind of what I get there on the back end. And it's just it's a unique product to the market.
Definitely is. Yeah.
And we're very happy to have done it that way.
Yeah.
That's kind of like throwback modern dusty.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Right. Yeah, we have had we've had some people call it a modern dusty, kind of a 1960s, 1970s type of product. Probably that low barrel entry proof has a lot to do with that.
Sure.
And things and a lot of people like those old whiskeys that they can't get today.
Oh yeah. Yep. This is, it's delicious. 2 thumbs way up for me on this one. And Bill, you'd sent a couple samples, which I never cracked. I wanted to wait. So this is the first time I've had it, and I'm absolutely blown away. I'm very impressed with it. It's delicious. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, hands down. It's such the attention that you paid to all the details in it and digging up the history and really sourcing a brand that is rooted also in the product and the history behind it and who W.H. McBrayer was, and just trying to showcase him to everybody here. It really comes out in the product. It's unique. It's something that I don't think I've had anything close to this mash bill before.
No.
And it just drinks so luxuriously. It's got nice, soft and subtle flavors, but also everything you're looking for. That the Bloody Butcher corn offers such a unique, different perspective on this bourbon. And it just tastes really, really great. It's an absolute hit.
Well, thank you both.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so Bill, before we wrap it up here, there is no physical location, right? So it's like
Correct.
People don't come over. So I just want to make sure our listeners understood there's not like a distillery or a gift shop or whatever they can go visit. But if people want to find you, find information about you guys, social media, website, what?
Yeah, we're McBrayer Legacy Spirits.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, our website, right? In our website, we actually have a store with our swag in it. There's a blog section that tells a lot of the stories. We have a picture of the letter on there. We have a picture of some of the old bottles of McBrayer that kind of, you can see where we kind of got some of our inspiration from.
Nice.
And we talk a little bit about William Harris McBrayer and things on that website, as well as we have an Instagram page and a Facebook page as well.
Very nice. Now, I will tell you before we close it out that my great-great-grandfather was a judge in Carter County, Kentucky. Okay, so, and Matt and I have talked about this. If I ever do a bourbon brand. I'm going to call it the Judge. So you can't do. Are you going to do that, Bill? Damn, man.
Well, he is the judge, and it does say the judge on our bottle here.
All right, well, then I guess I'm screwed, man. Here you go, Matt. I thought for sure that, one of these days I was going to be able to pay
Sorry, Absalom.
a tribute to, I know, Absalom Rucker. Sorry. Oh, but that's okay. After drinking this, man, I'm fine with that, Bill. Well, we've had a great time tonight, man. We really appreciate you joining us and coming down and spending some time being our first guest here. We're gonna have to get a plaque or something, that says that you are the first guest at the podcasting table here at the Bourbon Life Studio. So we're really happy to have you down here. I'm glad we were able to connect. I'm sorry I wasn't able to connect with you and your wife. I'm glad that you and Matt were able to do that, though.
You guys do a great job. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
I always enjoy listening to you guys and hearing all of Matt's tasting notes. And
he's an expert.
He really does a great job, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, good. Well, I appreciate that. Matt, before we close it out, man, anything you want to add?
Bill, I'm so glad, especially after I got to meet your wife, Susie. We had that excellent dinner and got to connect over that we were able to get you on so that everybody could hear the story and everything that we talked about and just how great you and your wife were, the hospitality. And it really comes through. I think a lot of your character comes through in this spirit and the companies and what you're trying to bring to everybody here. So thank you so much for your attention to detail, your commitment to the heritage and the legacy, and for spending time talking and chatting with us and our listeners tonight.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep, I can't top that at all. But Bill, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down and hanging out with us, like Matt said. And whiskey, the bourbon's delicious. I mean, no other way to say it. So looking forward to future releases on this one. And Matt, I am going to pour up a huge sample out of that bottle before you take it back with you. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Of course, this is the Bourbon Life Podcast, presented by Bespoken Spirits. And we want to just thank all of our sponsors. We appreciate their support. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Whether it's rye, sour mash Tennessee whiskey, or bourbon, Davidson Reserve has something delicious to offer any whiskey lover's palate. Pick up a bottle of one of our award-winning Davidson Reserve whiskeys from your local retailer today. Visit www.davidsonreserve.com for more information. And cheers to drinking local.